Stuart Lowrey, who I work with quite a bit and does an incredible job with ATF, Special Agent in charge of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, Louisville Division, where he heads criminal and regulatory enforcement in Kentucky, West Virginia, and southern Indiana, to disrupt and dismantle violent criminal groups, gangs, and illicit firearms trafficking networks, enhance firearms and explosives industry compliance, and expand partnerships with other federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. He's held this position from 2012 to 2015 and from October 2016 to present. I work with him a great deal. It's incredible the partnership we have with ATF and Adam Black, who's the resident agent in charge here. We've got an incredible investment of about a $300,000 new piece of equipment called a NIBIN ballistics machine that will be online, if not already, pretty quickly, and there'll be more training and another seminar similar to this for all of you to learn how to test ballistics and link crimes together. But these partnerships with DEA and ATF are pretty remarkable. But Stuart, thanks very much, Stuart.
Thank you. Good morning. Again, Stuart Lowrey with ATF out of the Louisville Division. Just to give you a perspective, Louisville Division, we cover basically the states of Kentucky and West Virginia as part of the region. I'm going to talk very specifically about a piece of this discussion as it relates to firearms. As you, I'm sure, probably aware, ATF is involved in a variety of firearms-related enforcement, both on the criminal side and on the regulatory side. And if you're not super familiar with it, I'll go into it briefly. On the firearms criminal enforcement side, all firearms-related violations at the federal level, ATF has jurisdiction on, and those include everything from criminal possession and use, acquisition, illicit trafficking of firearms, as well as criminal use of firearms in terms of armed drug trafficking, other crimes of violence associated with the use of firearms. One piece of that of course, has to do with how individuals acquire firearms, and I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about that as it relates to this topic. We also regulate the firearms industry, everything from design and manufacture of firearms to the record-keeping responsibilities that manufacturers, wholesalers, and federally licensed retail dealers are required to conform to in terms of how they handle sales, how they assist in the collection of information to perform background checks on their purchasers, and the record-keeping requirements that they have to assist law enforcement down the road should those firearms ever be recovered by law enforcement and we need to run a history on the firearm, what we refer to as tracing, crime gun tracing. So I want to talk initially very specifically, I think, on topic with the issues here today with regard to what we define as unlawful use of controlled substances. The Gun Control Act prohibits any person who is a, quote, unlawful user of or addicted to any controlled substance from possessing firearms or ammunition that are in or affecting interstate commerce. What that effectively means is there's a couple different statutes under federal law that are applicable to this discussion. Title 18 United States Code 922 G3 prohibits any person who is an unlawful user of or addicted to controlled substance from shipping, transporting, receiving, or possessing firearms or ammunition which have been in or affect interstate commerce. Likewise, 18 U.S.C. 922 D3 makes it unlawful for any person to sell or otherwise dispose of any firearm or ammunition to any person knowing or having reasonable cause to believe that such a person is an unlawful user of or addicted to a federally controlled substance. Now, the regulatory definition of unlawful drug user in 27 CFR, as well as case law interpreting the Gun Control Act, makes it clear that current users of unlawful controlled substances are prohibited. However, the regulation also indicates that an inference of current use may be drawn from evidence of recent use or possession of controlled substances or a pattern of use or possession that reasonably covers the present time. Now, for these reasons, anyone who is currently using marijuana, whether it is for, quote, medicinal purposes or otherwise, if they were to attempt to purchase a firearm at a federally licensed dealer, should answer yes to question 11E on ATF Form 4473. Can you put that form up? I don't have a lot of slides, but we'll show you a couple things. This is the firearms transaction record. If any individual goes to a federally licensed firearms dealer, would include pawn dealers, big box firearms dealers, mom and pop dealers, federally licensed firearms dealers, every transaction requires this form to be filled out. When you get into Section 11, what we're referring to are some of the prohibiting issues associated with the transfer, possession, receipt of firearms. Some of the ones you may be most familiar with. Okay. Are you under indictment for a felony? Have you been convicted of a felony? Are you a fugitive from justice? Some of the various prohibitors there in 11B through I. As you can see there in 11E, the question is, are you an unlawful user of or addicted to marijuana or any depressant, stimulant, narcotic drug, or any other controlled substance? This form's been amended several times for a variety of reasons, but for a number of years, as you can see in the bold print, warning, the use or possession of marijuana remains unlawful under federal law, regardless of whether it has been legalized or decriminalized for medicinal or recreational purposes in the state in which you reside. That question and that warning is followed in, this is actually a 6-page document with about 4 pages of instructions, not only for the purchaser but also for the licensed dealer. But in answering that question, as we're told by federally licensed dealers, they very often will have an individual question when they get to that point in the form and ask, I don't think I'm an unlawful user. I'm sanctioned in my state because of state law, or I have this card, or something to that effect. The form itself and the instructions that we provide dealers clearly state that under federal law, regardless of the state law, if you are a user of marijuana, your answer to this question would be yes, I'm an unlawful user under federal law. And as a result of that, the dealer should negate the sale and end the transaction at that point. We have, as far back as 2011, we have provided an open letter to all of the federally licensed firearms dealers across the country, where we go into greater detail on this issue. And we remind them of their responsibilities as a dealer, the exposure they have as a federally licensed dealer. We conduct compliance inspections with dealers. And we look for all of these prohibitors through a variety of means during the course of inspections of dealers to make sure that they're compliant with federal law in the functions of their businesses. And if we determine that individuals have been transferred firearms by a dealer, or an individual has said yes to one of the prohibiting questions, there is a potential for the dealer to have sanctions against them on their license, up to and including revocation of their license. So it's a serious issue for the dealers, something that we work with them in seminars and one-on-one when we do inspections, and at other times when we meet with dealers to make sure they're fully clear on their role in this issue. Again, I'll touch on this again. Anyone who is currently using marijuana, whether for medicinal purposes or otherwise, would answer yes to 11E on the form, are you an unlawful user? Again, under federal law, they would be prohibited from receiving or possessing firearms. As I mentioned, we provide advice and guidance to federally licensed dealers to make sure that they're aware of this. Again, the letter that we sent to all the dealers, and we've reiterated, was sent out as far back as September 21st of 2011, very specifically addressing this issue. If a potential firearms purchaser at the point of sale talks with the federal licensee's salesman and indicates, has discussion on this issue, presents a marijuana card, it describes what their usage is, either recreational or medicinal, again, the dealer will advise them that they're prohibited, will tell them what the appropriate answer to this question is, whether they complete the form or whether they negate the sale right there. But again, the dealer is going to deny the transaction. Now, I also want to just touch a little bit different issue. As you're probably aware as well, there's individuals who are not in a recreational or medicinal state that have a drug history. They've had actual arrests for drug possession, drug trafficking related offenses. Again, they may, in the course of filling out this form, if they were to come and try to buy a gun over the counter, they may falsify the form and say, no, I'm not an unlawful user. Again, through the NICS background check system, an individual who has those types of arrests within their background may be denied through NICS, through the background check process, the same as they would be as if they had felony convictions, were currently under indictment, had a protective order open against them. That type of activity, drug possession, arrests, charges, and or convictions can lead to a denial at the point of sale. What we're seeing in addition to this activity specifically is, again, we see a variety of firearms entering into drug-related activity, drug trafficking, illicit drug trafficking activity. And in addition to unlawful users acquiring firearms either through over-the-counter sales or attempting to, or through street sales from individuals, gun shows, what have you, any place where they do not have to fill out this form, an individual type transaction, not only do we see unlawful users find them in possession of firearms, which subjects them to federal prosecution under 922G3, we also see drug users that acquire firearms through various means who also traffic those firearms to gain revenue to use for drug purchases or other means. We also find quite a bit of transition in stolen firearms or other firearms that are acquired where those are introduced into, bartered into the drug trafficking business, often with the drug dealers themselves, and they kind of work their way back upstream, possibly to areas where the drug sources are. So that's really what I had. Mike, did you have something else you wanted to?
No.